After losing Ty Hawkins, the Frogs have at least made an effort at their next quarterback for 2025. I'll tell you about all that and more next here on Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're also free and available wherever it is you get your podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. So TCU, they got Ty Hawkins committed very early in the process for 2025. That was back actually when he was a sophomore, the summer after his sophomore year, going into junior season. All throughout his junior season, he stayed committed. Things looked like they were going well. He seemed to have a great relationship with Kendall Briles. He went to the Elite 11 showcase, performed admirably there, wore TCU gear, talked about how great things were at TCU. And then, shortly after that, he flipped to SMU. And it's really the first time since SMU has made the move to a power conference that I thought, man, what a job by them, going and getting somebody that TCU had committed for a long time. The reason SMU was interested was because Keelan Russell, who they originally had committed there in Dallas, he flipped to Alabama. And so the question over the last few weeks has been, what is TCU going to do now? They had a lot of momentum on the recruiting trail leading up to that huge decision that Ty Hawkins made. It was one of the many surprising reasons as to why he left. They had done a nice job adding some weapons on offense, adding some big-time players on defense. He was actually active in them getting Micah Strickland a few weeks earlier on an official visit, who is one of their highest-rated commits and is a four-star corner. But one thing that I feel like people are starting to get their head around, but it's taken a while in college sports. With NIL in the picture, this is becoming more and more like free agency. And what I mean by that is, in the free agency world, in football, or whatever sport it is, NFL, NBA, people, before free agency starts, they'll come up with all those reasons why player X might sign with a certain team. Oh, he has connections there. He's from there. He knows this coach. He likes this GM, whatever the case is. We've seen this with the Mavericks for years, right? Like, they always had a hard time with free agents, struck out a lot. And, this player, Darren Williams, going way back in the day. Darren Williams, he's from Dallas. He would love to come back and play. No, it didn't work out. Chris Bosh, he's from the DFW area. He would love to come back and play in Dallas. No, it didn't work out. And, yeah, there's all kinds of reasons why people sign with teams. And sometimes it is, you know what, I'm late in my career. I want to go chase a ring. I want to go win. That's a huge priority for me. Sometimes it is, I'm more comfortable with this coach. But in most cases, I would say in 65 to 70% of these cases, it's who's going to give me the most money. And we can lament that as fans, but that's the reality. And college sports is becoming very similar, especially in the recruiting, whether it's in the transfer portal or in the high school ranks. SMU went and ponied up, no pun intended, a check for Ty Hawkins, and they went and got him. And so the challenging thing for TCU now is, if you look at the top, 40 quarterbacks, at least from a recruiting ranking standpoint, most of them are already committed. Bryce Underwood, the top QB in the nation, according to 247 Sports, he's headed to LSU. Tavian St. Clair's headed to Ohio State. Keelan Russell, Alabama. Deuce Knight, Notre Dame. We can go down the list. Julian Lewis, USC. All of these players have made commitments to respective schools. And we're seeing it happen early and earlier with quarterbacks because a lot of teams are saying, you know what, we want to get the quarterback locked in, and then we want to build the rest of the class around him. So if TCU is going to land a QB for the 2025 class, a highly rated QB at least, they're probably going to have to poach someone from another school. Now you think, all right, who would make sense in that role? And according to Jeremy Clark from 247 Sports, the Frogs have at least made contact. Now, kind of vague there and sort of leaves the door open for a lot of different scenarios. But they have made contact with Adam Schobel, the quarterback from Columbus High School. Adam has a lot of connections to TCU. His cousin John is coming to play for the Frogs. He's part of the 2025 class. He's playing linebacker right now, also at Columbus. But he projects as an edge rusher at the next level. Adam's father, Matt, played tight end for the Frogs. His uncle, Aaron, also played at TCU, and both those guys went on to have outstanding NFL careers. He's a legacy. And so all these reasons point to the fact that TCU would be a good fit. He's had kind of interesting recruitment. He was originally committed to Baylor, then flipped to Oklahoma State, and he's been committed to Oklahoma State now since the fall, or I guess the spring. Last spring at some point, he made that decision. And one thing about Adam Schobel, there's a lot of layers here. One is I don't really know how he feels about the fact that while he's a TCU legacy, up to this point, the Frogs haven't shown a lot of interest in him. And I think the simple reason for that is that they had their guy. They had scouted out Ty Hawkins. They thought he was going to be the dude. It didn't end up working out. And so now they're pivoting and trying to find someone else to replace that role. Another interesting aspect of this recruitment is when you watch Adam Schobel's film, he is more of your prototypical pocket passer. Now, as everyone else in modern football is doing these days, you watch the huddle tape, he's running a lot of RPOs. I mean, he's moving out of the pocket. He's making things happen, but he's not your typical dual threat quarterback that has outstanding speed and is going to break away. What he does have is the type of frame you want for somebody who's going to stand back there and sling the rock around. I mean, he's over 6 feet tall, 6'4", 190 pounds. You can see why his dad and uncle were NFL players. Dad was an NFL tight end. Uncle was an NFL defensive end. I mean, he's got that type of frame that you want for a strong-armed pocket passer QB. But as I was watching this tape today, there's a lot to like. I mean, the ball gets out on time. It's accurate. He can drop it in the bucket on a long pass. He can hit those, quick game concepts where, all right, I'm immediately, whether it's an RPO or I'm taking the snap and just getting the ball out, like I can find my guy on the slant, I can find my guy on a stop, on a hitch, get the ball out there, get it out there on time, and make things happen. Big time arm. And, I mean, there's been some discussion about the lack of mobility, but honestly, he moves around fine. Again, not a burner, but I think if he had to scramble and get some yardage, he could do that. He moves outside the pocket well. Very different QB than Ty Hawkins. I mean, a lot of what Ty was doing was creating plays, doing a lot of things off schedule. And from what I've seen, that doesn't really seem to be Adam's game, but he's really good at what he does, and that's throwing the football around. Last year, only 4 interceptions, 30 touchdowns, and threw for 2,405 yards. Over his career at Columbus, 7,668 yards and 94 touchdowns. Columbus is a 4A school. They're one of the best 4A schools in the state. He's been a 3-year starter there on the varsity. He'll be a 4-year starter this upcoming year. So he's gotten a lot of reps in that system with those players, a lot of live football that he's played, and that's encouraging. So I don't know where his headspace is at. And again, I think, does it matter that he's a legacy? Yes, of course. It's awesome that he has ties here. His cousin's going to come play for the Frogs. Like, all those things are working in TCU's direction. I don't know how much personally he is kind of taking to heart the fact that TCU hasn't been super active in recruiting him or communicating with him up to this point. But I'll tell you one thing that can take away a lot of hard feelings, and that's money. So if TCU wants to make this happen, I don't know the numbers of what he's making at Oklahoma State, but it feels like they're at least kind of saying, all right, let's reach out. Let's make this happen. Let's get it done. Now, I think from a team building perspective, one thing you have to watch, Cowboys training camp starts tomorrow, which means we're going to get the State of the Union address from Jerry Jones. Cowboys have a number of players right now that they're working on contracts with. CeeDee Lamb apparently going to hold out training camp, looking for a new deal. Dak Prescott needs a new deal. Micah Parsons needs a new deal eventually. And when the negotiating is going on in a public space, you'll hear Jerry and Stephen Jones talk a lot about, well, there's only so much money to go around, right? You got a pie. That's your salary cap. Everybody's got to get a piece of the pie. If you give this guy a huge slice, well, that affects everyone else. And I mean, the salary cap's funny money, but you get the point. They're basically saying we got limited resources here. We got to divvy it up how we see fit. Same type of thing now with recruiting. And I think TCU's sort of at a crossroads with this class. They could go one of two ways. And we saw this offseason, they made a decision with what they did at the QB position. I think they could have dipped into the world of, all right, let's go get a transfer quarterback that has done some things at the college level that could be a ready-made starter in week one, and let's throw a bag at him and get him on campus and run from there. What they decided to do instead was stay the course with Josh Hoover, bring in someone in Ken Seals who can, be a sounding board for him and be a good safety net if something goes wrong. And then they use the rest of their resources to try to put talent around their quarterback. And so with Hoover here and Haas Haney in the wings, I don't necessarily think it's a must that they get a QB in this class. But you got to decide which way you're going to go. Okay, are we going to, funnel these resources towards getting a QB and maybe overspending a little bit because you're most likely going to get someone who's committed somewhere else? Or do you say, all right, let's take a deep breath, let's regroup and kind of divvy that up between talented players at other positions so that we can build a good team around the guys we have in the quarterback room right now? That's one of the decisions TCU's going to have to make. But they have at least made contact with Adam Schobel, and they're starting that process of, okay, let's see what it would look like if we went a different direction with a signal caller for this recruiting class. When we come back, men's and women's basketball, workouts have gotten started. Things are underway. In case you missed it, what does this team look like? We'll talk about it next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. If you need tickets, you need to download the Gametime app. Download it today. You can get $20 off your first purchase with the code LOCKEDONCollege. Again, that's LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. One of the great things about the Gametime app is even up to the day of the event, you can find fantastic deals. They have last-minute deals, flash sales. Everything's available there to you. So if you're not a great planner, or if you just want to kind of wait it out and see if prices go down a little bit when people are getting closer to, okay, I got to make some money on this. I got to make some sort of profit on it, or at least break even. So maybe I'll drop the price just to get it off my hands. You can do that with the Gametime app. You can also see exactly where you're going to sit, or I guess I should say exactly what the view is going to be from your seat. Gametime app makes it easy for you. Again, Locked On College is the promo code for $20 off your first purchase. Make buying tickets a simple. Take the hassle out of it by using the Gametime app. Download it today. $20 off your first purchase with that promo code Locked On College. So TCU men's and women's basketball workouts are underway. And I wanted to just kind of briefly go down, all right, what does the roster look like for these respective teams? Because they both did a lot of work in the portal. For the men's team, really the only returner as far as guys that got playing time last year, Ernest Uday, who's going to be your starting center again this upcoming season. Isaiah Manning will be back. He was on the squad last season, but he didn't play a lot. He was on the bench. And Jace Posey, also there with Isaiah Manning. Both those guys were freshmen last year. They're going to be guards, wing players, and a lot of excitement around both those players. I think especially Isaiah Manning, he shared some practice clips earlier this offseason about what he's been doing, what he's been working on, and he looks like a really polished player. As far as what they've done in the transfer portal, added a lot of talent, and most of it is experienced talent. Frankie Collins, guard, who spent some time at Michigan and Arizona State, good passer, great distributor, not the strongest shooter, but someone who can run your offense, I think keep things under control. Hopefully will lead to less turnovers this year and just a more functional and better half-court team. They also went and got Noah Reynolds, guard from Green Bay, who can light it up. He's a true shooter. Brendan Wenzel from Wyoming, another athletic wing player, 6'8", can get rebounds, can shoot it from three, shoot jumpers. One underrated guy I think they picked up is R.J. Jones from Kansas State. R.J. was really highly recruited out of high school. He ended up going to Kansas State, didn't play a whole lot in his freshman season, and so he's going to transfer over here and try to make that move. But he's a guy that can fill it up, and this team's going to need more floor spacing this upcoming season. As far as freshmen go, David Punch from Harker Heights, which is in the Killeen area here in Texas. He's 6'7", kind of a forward, probably going to play the 4. Another transfer guy, Trezarian White, from UNC Wilmington, who I think will sort of fit the Emmanuel Miller role of the last few years, as a guy who can do a lot of the things that aren't necessarily going to show up in the stat sheet, but are just winning plays, also get a lot of rebounds, can shoot the ball pretty well, good in the mid-range. So he's ready to make a huge impact this year. Micah Robinson, the freshman from Oak Hill Academy, he'll be coming in as a forward at 6'6". So a lot of exciting names. Ashton Simmons, the guard from Beaumont, a freshman as well. So I think the biggest question for this team is guard play actually looks pretty salty. I feel like you got a lot of guys that could be big-time scorers for you. It's really just a question of who becomes that consistent presence, because they didn't have that last year. It sort of vacillated early in the season, and it was, I guess if you want to spin it positively, you could just be like, oh, well, they just got a number of guys who can do it on any given night. But in reality, there was a lack of true playmakers. And so you're going to need that this year. But behind Ernest Uday Jr., there's not a lot in that front court. Kind of an underrated player for the transfer portal, because I believe he's coming in as a walk-on, as Adam Stewart, 6'10" center from Salt Lake City. And then Malik Diallo, who's a freshman as well and played his high school ball at a private school in Utah, 6'9", 234. But, those guys are really young, not a ton of starts under their belt. And so if Ernest gets into foul trouble like he did sometimes last year, especially early in the season, then not a ton of depth there at that center and forward position. But if they can get that figured out, I think there's a chance that this could be a really good team this year. On the women's side, big-time headlines from Mark Campbell and company, led by Landon Haley Van Lith, who's going to play in the Olympics in the next couple of weeks in that 3-on-3 event. Returning players, Madison Connor, who was a great scorer for them last year. Also Sedona Prince, Dr. Sedona Prince, coming back from like year 9 of college. A little bit of humor there, but she has been in school for a very long time. And so she's back getting an eligibility waiver after suffering an injury last year. Maddie Shear from Kentucky, transfer guard coming in. Also Taylor Bigby from USC, Donovan Hunter from Oregon State. Those are going to be guards as well. A lot of flexibility on this team, and looks like they're going to play a lot of 4-out and 5-out basketball. So, Sedona will be your true center, but as we saw last season, they like to put her at the top of the key sometimes. Free throw line extended, getting her the ball, letting her face up, use her ability as a passer and a playmaker, and also just kind of that mid-range jump shot, that fadeaway jump shot she had was a big weapon for her last season. So I'm super excited about what we're going to see from that squad. It was a really up and down year, and they went through some tough stretches because of those injuries. But towards the end of the season, when they got healthy again, you kind of saw the vision of, man, this could be a team that could be dangerous moving forward. It just never fully came to pass because they dealt with those injuries off and on all year. But if they can stay healthy, then I really like the potential there. And it's just like Mark Campbell's just a fun guy to be around. He's got a lot of energy. He seems to have a very clear vision for what he wants to do here, which is exciting. And, yeah, if he's women's basketball, I think they're going to be a force this upcoming season as they get ready for year 2 of the Mark Campbell era. So that's a little bit on, what we're looking at with hoops. Workouts have started, all season getting ramped up and underway. And we're honestly not that far away. Like once football starts, we'll be about 2 months out from, non-conference basketball. So fun times as the athletic calendar starts to kind of ramp up and get going again, especially for me as someone who's doing a podcast multiple times a week on TCU Athletics. When we come back, I'll get some of your reaction and we'll wrap things up. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. On Monday, I talked about some late additions and also maybe just some underrated players who could make an impact for this upcoming season. And you guys had some thoughts. Cole Rogers said this roster should be as good as anyone in the conference, if not the best. If we don't see 9 wins out of the squad, then TCU needs to upgrade the head coach. I'm a believer in Dykes, but this season is a must-win. Power in the conference is right for the picking. Missing this opportunity should be punishable. TCU needs to recruit a top 15 to 20 class year in and year out and play for a conference championship every other year. That should be the goal. Yeah, I love all those goals. I think this is a big year for Sonny Dykes. I don't know if 9 is a magic number, but I get your point. I mean, this is a talented roster. I think there's still a lot of moving parts and inexperience at key positions on this team that could hold them back. But I think they've addressed a lot of the issues. We might be in the early stages of addressing those issues. Like, I don't know. I hope, and I don't think we're going to see a peak Andy Avalos defense this year, meaning I hope it gets better throughout his tenure. I do think we're going to see a better defense, though, and one that is more aggressive and making more plays. And offensively, I've said it all offseason, but I really do think it just comes down to if the O-line can work well together and give them a consistent running game and protect Josh Hoover, then this team has a chance to be really good. If that doesn't happen, then you'll see a lot of the inconsistency that we did last year. But, yeah, I get your point. I mean, I think the Big 12 is a fascinating league. It's going to be super competitive and very parity-driven. And there's a lot of teams around the conference that feel like they have a chance to be kind of the new class of the league. I do believe TCU, though, has more resources than a lot of those schools that think that they can make it happen. And so there really isn't an excuse that they can't be a contender year in and year out in this conference. I would agree with that. Brian Caper says, I hope the kick return unit is way better this year. Always seemed like we were starting at the 8-yard line. Wasn't that bad, but there were a lot of times where it was inside the 20 for sure. And they brought on Casey Petrie to be kind of an overseer of special teams. Mark Tramadol is also still on the staff, even though he's in more of an advisory position now. So, yeah, I think special teams across the board has to be better. Kyle Limmerman will come in and make a difference as a place kicker. They also got Ethan Craw, a punter from Australia. And so I think they're hoping those guys can help the kicking game. But, yeah, kick return game has to be more consistent. And punt return, you could use some more explosiveness there too. Obviously, TCU's been really spoiled in that regard. But, man, I would like to see some breakaway special teams plays and, some plays where you can kind of flip the game. Zoom Play says Campus to Canton did a great video about Cam Cook. I think he'll be the best running back in the Big 12. I'm not familiar with that channel, but that's awesome. I'll go check that out. I'm a big Cam Cook fan. I think he's going to be fantastic as well. And, Ollie Gordon's in the league, so I think it'll be tough to replace his production. But, yeah, I have a lot of confidence in Cam coming in and making things happen. I don't think it's going to be just this huge adjustment for him. I feel like he's ready to step up and take this role as the lead running back, and he's going to do a great job getting the Frogs where they need to be. So I like the confidence, and if he is the best running back in the league, then good things are happening for TCU because that means that rushing attack is salty and kind of back to what we saw with Kendra Miller and Amari DiMercado a few years ago. We'll be back tomorrow. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. It's your team, and we do it here every day.